Hello, everyone, and welcome to Theory into Practice. I'm Dan Scott, and today we are actually going to be talking to Ginny Katz. Ginny, which she likes to be called, she said we're friends now, so I can call her Ginny, which is amazing. So thank you for that. So Ginny is she's aspiring PhD candidate right now. She's all but done her dissertation, which is amazing. I'm working on my PhD as well, and I've slowed down as well on that note. But Ginny, we're going to talk today. We're going to talk to Ginny about emergency management leadership, about the next generation of emergency managers, and a project that she's working on that she's very proud of, that she wants to share with the audience, which is HazAdapt, which we are going to hear more about, and we'll have links to all that and shares in the show notes. So Ginny, welcome to Theory into Practice.
Hey, thanks, Dan. It's great to be here. And yes, we are friends. Definitely call me Ginny. And yeah, it's taking a moment in the PhD right now to pause and focus what's important. I'm seeing a lot of PhD students do that. So we're in good company. And a lot of students are really looking at the surroundings and saying, wow, it seems a little bit interesting to be in school when there's so much need outside of school in practice. And really, that's kind of a theme that I wanted to bring in and talk with you about today is, really taking an assessment of what's happening around us. And then as emergency managers, rising to this new occasion. So like you mentioned, I have been a PhD student studying human geography at Oregon State University. And really the whole reason I started the PhD was because I was working in emergency management and studying in my master's degree of global health and disasters. And saw this massive need for engagement technology. It's something that helps us as emergency authorities really engage the public before, during, and after an emergency or disaster. And I thought, well, wait a minute, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, but we don't really have anything for this. And in emergency management, they don't really teach you tech or how to build technology. So it was this moment of recognizing that if we were to just wait for current technology creators to create what we needed, it wasn't going to come out in a way that was going to answer those gaps, those communication gaps, those engagement gaps that were happening. And it was this moment of, if we wait for someone else to do it, it's not going to be what we need, or it's going to be too long. And so for me as an emergency manager, aspiring emergency manager, I should say, it was a moment to kind of take a pivot, reassess, and say, I think this is my calling. And that resonating yes, this is it, started that journey to ask, well, okay, if we wanted to create an engagement platform that was ethical and inclusive and helped everybody, know what to do before, during, and after a disaster, and helped emergency authorities engage the public, what would that look like? So that started my journey. And we've, since then, that was back in 2017, since then, we have created HazAdapt. And I say we, meaning my team. This is a student-led and young professional-led startup. We're official business. And we've released our very first product, and it's a free app and tool that has a inclusive hazard guide. So tons of natural and man-made disasters and emergencies. And within each one of those, hazards, information on what to do to prepare, react, and recover. And we include information for kids, pets, elderly, persons with disabilities. So it's a very comprehensive and inclusive hazard guide that you can customize to your need right then and there. And that was that moment, right here, we have this product, HazAdapt, that we are trying to get out to the community, because we know that people need something in case, of infrastructure failure. And, this is something that is so important that we address the bottom-up need, right? And traditional emergency management has followed traditional public safety, which is that top-down approach, right? We receive our instructions from the top and we carry out, or we receive our resources. And because of that, there's been quite a few gaps that have happened, and where the public isn't receiving or the resources that they may need. And I don't blame emergency managers for this at all. In fact, I think they're doing the best they can with what they're given. I think that it's time for technologists to also rise to the occasion and say, yeah, okay, we can build to your need, and we can build to the standard that's required for this really delicate sphere of emergency management and public engagement. So I'm super passionate about this because I have myself experienced what it's like to be in an emergency without the information and getting exposed to danger. And I know that during every disaster, tons of people also experience that, especially people that may not speak English as a first language, or haven't had a chance to really engage with their local emergency authority. Maybe they're tourists, maybe they're just new to town, or maybe they just haven't had the chance to get in touch with that information. So that's where we're at right now. But I wanted to kind of touch back on the theme and talk to you about this today of rising to the occasion. And this is not something that, is new to emergency management, right? We do this every disaster. We go in, we assess, and we do the best we can. But I want to broaden that scope out and really look at this new era, right? Since 2020, things have been completely just on their head, right? We are really readjusting, we're adapting to this new disaster era. And I've been reading the new disaster era, or emergency management post 2020, the novel and the nasty. And this is an assessment that has been saying, look at the past 50 years and us looking ahead to the next 50 years and saying emergency management has to be different. We have to find something new here. And I think that there's a couple of places where emergency managers as leaders need to look at themselves, and then also need to look at their team and how can they support their team to create those creative solutions for this new era. But Dan, so you've been in emergency management how long? And how are you seeing this kind of change since 2020?
So I've actually been in emergency management for 15 years, and I actually come from the response background. So I was educational law enforcement is where I started, and I fell into emergency management based on a need that was discovered. And through finding an understanding for emergency management on what it was that I needed to be doing to make sure that I was doing it right and getting educated, I fell in love with emergency management, made a permanent shift into being an emergency manager. And I've moved around quite a bit over the last years in pursuit of doing just that and growing as an emergency management professional. The 2020, with everything that started taking place in 2020, I mean, in 2020 in general, it wasn't just COVID. There was record-breaking fires and storms and winter storms and hurricanes and tornadoes, and it was just so it was a crazy year. If anything, though, what I've been really talking through when it comes to COVID is that in general, COVID was a terrible thing to happen, but a lot of positive things came out of the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And if we embraced it as emergency managers and we truly stepped up and we stepped into the spotlight and we took advantage of the situation, the emergency manager, the individual emergency manager, could have created a lot of change, created some momentum for themselves, and been able to step into leadership in any way. And leadership in general doesn't have to be a position, but one of the things that I'm really promoting is that these positions of leadership, of authority, decision-making powers are we're seeing more of them coming out. And our goal should be to be experienced and eligible to fill those roles when they come available. There are emergency managers out there that would not be qualified to fit into these executive type roles, and we're seeing more of them. So we need to prepare ourselves to fill them. And that's one of the things that I think 2020 really brought for me, especially as an emergency management practitioner myself, and making that shift to get away from being the emergency management practitioner to being more of a server of the emergency manager. I'm going to serve the server. Emergency management is service, and leadership is service. And my goal is now to serve the server. And that's what I'm doing in my shift from being a practitioner to a professional who supports the practitioner. And that's kind of where my view is right now, and where I feel my road is going. The shift in my direction hasn't changed. I love emergency management. I fell in love with it, and I don't think that'll ever be something that I can ever look at and say I've fallen out of love with emergency management. I love emergency management, very passionate about it, but I found that there's a need to support the practitioners, and that's what I'm doing. I feel like that's what I'm called to do now.
Absolutely. And that's such a beautiful story of like you rising to the occasion over and over again, seeing the need, filling the need. I mean, and I think that really speaks to the heart of a lot of, us in emergency management. We love what we do, right? We really love to serve, and be there on the ground, making it happen. And, throughout every level of emergency management, that calling to serve. And that can, especially for us also, I also have a background in emergency response, and emergency medical response. We feel that call, I think, in the sense that, like, we know we can bring change. And when that pivot comes, where we see that opportunity, hey, there's a gap here, there's something here that needs to happen, there's kind of a tug and pull. Is this going to help my impact, in the same way that if I was to just stay the course, if I was to just keep doing what I'm doing, is this going to make the impact that I want, or that I'm hoping to do? And this is where, I think it's so important that emergency managers have resources like Theory into Practice, that hear other, emergency professionals, emergency resources, and other public safety, authorities talk about that moment, right? Because it's actually quite a vulnerable moment, right? We're supposed to have all the answers in emergency management, right? People look to us and trust us. And us saying, what, something needs to happen here. I'm not 100% sure what it looks like, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to do the hard work, and I'm going to make it happen. That is, I think, such a testament to a core of so many of us in response, in emergency response, and throughout every level. And it's a vulnerable place to be.
It is. And I actually just had a conversation with someone else yesterday about being vulnerable and having, the, not only the willingness, but the permission to be vulnerable at times. And not feeling any fear of saying, I don't know. And as to your comment of, we're supposed to know everything. Well, whether we're supposed to know it or not, they expect us to know these things when we're responding to situations or helping coordinate and support through situations or incidents or events. And we should be doing our best to make sure that if we don't know it, we know who does know it, so that they can help us with the process. So, that's just another avenue of leadership, is that you don't have to know everything, but you should know who knows what you don't, so that you can make yourself and your team that much stronger in its capabilities. And another area of leadership is understanding that just because, and with emergency management in general, we find that emergency managers are usually a department of one. And just because someone is a department of one doesn't mean they're alone. And
Right.
having those leadership capabilities, those communication capabilities, can help establish a really strong network and partnership of collaboration without having all those resources that we would need. Because we need resources, we need money, and we need things, and we need people, and we need consultants. That's all things that we need, but we don't necessarily get because of constraints. But if we play it right and we do it right and we build a proper network, we have enough resources to do the job properly.
That's right. That's right. And that, I think, we will put all that responsibility on ourselves, right? We will find the tools we need. We will find those methods. We will make that happen. Because I think that's part of a lot of the people, just I think a core personality trait for us in emergency management, right? We rise to the occasion, we figure it out, we try to make that happen whenever we can, even with our limited resources. But, it's not just that we're not alone in that there's other emergency managers out there. There are other entities that should also be rising to the occasion, like technologists, like other areas of the government, like the public, in a lot of ways. We all have a responsibility to rise. And when we can start seeing, more examples of that, of people saying, all right, I'm going to take that step forward and rise to that occasion, we're going to see, that support also flood into emergency management. And that's really my hope, in starting HazAdapt, like you. I'm, the servant that serves those that serve, right? And that's a really important role, because, and I tell me if this has been your experience, but when I talk with emergency managers, it's one more thing added to the plate, right? I'm already creating emergency preparedness plans. I am gathering resources. I'm engaging the public. I'm doing all these things. And now I have to also be a social media manager and, pulling these resources that they may not have help with. So this is where, if we can help, with that load, because that load will always be heavy. It's a very heavy role, to be an emergency manager. How can we continue to support that undertaking? And if we can, help lighten the load to where it's much more conducive and they get back to the core of what they were doing, which is serving, preparing, and responding to the community need. So, one thing that I think is a critical thing for leaders to consider as they're, in these moments of vulnerability with themselves, but also with their team, is that we as people are more likely to be able to create creative solutions if we feel like our thoughts, our perception, and like our intelligence are valued. We have a self-worth, because self-worth is tied to our willingness to try and potentially fail and pick ourselves back up. And if we don't have that sense of self-worth, it's harder for us to do that. And, emergency management is one of the, I think, most important, but the least talked about and least thanked, entities out there. And same with a lot of public safety, right? We need to have a bit of that self-worth. And, we know that when we do our job right, people may not notice because they're safe. And that's where, I really want to encourage emergency managers and, emergency authorities out there that, the work you're doing is seen. It is so appreciated. And this is a moment where when you're cultivating your team and you're cultivating, the environment that you're working in, giving yourself that self-worth in the sense that like you have, resources around you, what you, have, and you can create those good steps, toward that solution. That's what's going to be able to help you explore opportunities and, come up with creative solutions, which we need because this is a new disaster era. It's not just that, these are the same old disasters just piled on top of one another. We are seeing more people movement ever than before. We are more connected technology wise. We have so many sides weighing in on the crisis, on what's happening, to where, this is a much more complex, system than it was even just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but especially 50 years ago. And our goal is to continue to adapt to this new situation. So I think coming back to that core need of creating a safe place for you to explore, to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I may not have this immediate answer, but I'm going to find it. I'm going to, run with it. I'm going to make it happen. And I see this also tied into, emergency managers adapting their messaging. So I recently went to a social media and disaster risk management workshop conference with, experts and researchers and practitioners from all around the world talking about social media and social media management for disaster risks. How are we collecting data? How are we engaging the public when a disaster happens? And one of the takeaways that was for practitioners on the ground now was there needs to be a willingness to say, we are open to new information. We are adapting our message as we go, and we're going to keep you updated because the public expects that. But we also need to have that vulnerability to say, we're still learning. We are still figuring this out together. And we're going to do everything we can to solve this. But right now, as much as we do, or, we are, not at the point where we have a final solution. That willingness to be vulnerable, that willingness to say we're in this together, not only, keeps the public aware of what's happening, but it builds trust. People want to know, what's happening, and they would want to feel like their emergency authorities are not just authorities, they're comrades, they're people on the ground, they're community. And that's, I think, a core thing for emergency managers. We want to be community, but we also have that pressure, right? We are expected to have the answer. We are expected to, make the right decisions all the time. And sometimes we're just still assessing and just gathering the information ourselves.
Yeah, that's very well said. And a lot of what I've been promoting a lot, and what I feel that a true emergency management practitioner and professional needs to be doing is active engagement in all these areas. So they're not sitting in their office writing plans. They're out and they're engaging in their community and within their organization and within collaborating and networking. And it's a consistent engagement that takes place that allows for these conversations to take place, but it also allows for them to be seen more. Mm-hmm. It allows them to get advocates for them, so they become a partner in the fight, if you will, to gain more funding, more support, more resources, and ideally to be more capable of doing the job in a manner that's well suited to whatever the community is or organization. We're seeing a lot more emergency management positions rise up in private industry, which is great to see. But the one of the hesitancies I see when it comes to supporting it so much is that their job descriptions are all over the place. Their job titles are all over the place. There's no clear clarification on what it is that what they're expected to do. They're usually mixed with 3 or 4 jobs inside there. So we're seeing more of that come up. We need more people to step into leadership roles and be more vocal and be more visible to say, this is the proper way that emergency management should run. This is the way it should look. These are the credentials they should have. This is the experience they should have. And it should be done in a way that is very forward moving and thinking for the profession and for the professional.
So spot on. So spot on. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think, that statement you said, it's like, what is the proper way? This is how we do it. I'm reminded of the saying, if you've seen one peace app, you've seen one peace app. Right? And emergency management, especially on the local level, can look different. It can look, a little bit different on how you engage your community based on your community. And I think that's been a struggle, especially since COVID, right? Because in person was just impossible, right? Especially as we were responding. But, in-person engagement was difficult, and using Facebook or any other, social media platform, it didn't do us the justice that we need. They just were created for the engagement that we really need to cultivate between the public and authority. We can make it work, right? We are intelligent people, and humans are incredible, and they will adapt to what they have at their fingertips. But we know we could do so much more and so much better. And we're thinking about encouraging, this next generation of emergency managers. I think, coming to that realization that it's not just about sitting at the desk. It's not just about the plans you make. It's not just about the paperwork. It is so much about the relationship, and that relationship is expanding to both in person, but also digital. And there's been a historical hesitancy, and for good reason, to have emergency authorities jump onto social media, right? Is it really, worth it? Is it taking too much of my time? I didn't join this job to become an emergency manager. I mean, and fair enough, right? Or sorry, and to be a social media manager, fair enough, right? That was something that has been kind of historically out of our scope. But I think we need to really encourage, the next, those that are in the position now, but then those that are coming in, you have to have an online presence, because people are watching you online, and people, expect that you will be there, and they're gathering the majority of their information from online resources. And we, also from that workshop I just went to, social media is the 4th most referenced, I guess, area for information compared to like official government websites, emergency texts or emails. Social media comes in, somewhere between 3 and 4. And depending on the disaster, people may even actually go to social media first to get that information. So it's a very valuable resource, and the public has been kind of trained to rely on it. So that encouragement to emergency managers, this is an important tool. It's available, but also it's kind of sad that that's kind of the only tool we've really got for that right now. I mean, not anymore though, as HazAdapt's coming out, but it will take a little bit of time as we're getting the public on to really have that same bandwidth that Facebook currently has. So, as we're working toward that, emergency professionals and emergency managers, preparedness authorities, they're going to have to use what they have. And so I want to just encourage, everyone out there to cultivate that leadership in yourself and in the way that is both in person and online.
I 100% agree, and one of my big pushes in promoting everybody really is that they becoming marketers. We all need to be becoming marketers, better at marketing, knowing how to market what it is that we do, whatever it is. Emergency management just happens to be where I sit. But emergency managers, we are not marketers, and we need to become marketers because we need to let the world know what it is we do, why we do it, why it's important, and how they can get involved. And that can't be done unless we step up and actually go to them, engage them, market to them. And we need to switch the way we do things with us, because that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And I really appreciate what you're doing and what you're bringing to the table, Ginny. And so let's tell the audience real quick where they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So you can always reach me at www.hazadapt.com. HazAdapt right now is an absolutely free resource, and it always will be free. The hazard guide, the emergency assistant, that is going to be something that people and emergency authorities can use to engage with hazard and safety information. So on HazAdapt, if you go to any of the hazards that are on there, there's a link that you can share directly to that hazard. So adding in that little tiny link from the hazard to your emergency mass notifications and texts, you've now just elevated your alert to a point resource where a person can see the alert, they click the link, and then they go to a comprehensive guide that not only can they customize to their need, they can also customize to their language. We offer 7 languages that people can continue to read the information in the most relevant way for them. So, check us out on our website, check out the app. It's online, it's on the app stores. As a company, as a startup, we've always partnered with community since the beginning. Before we were even a business, before we even had a tool officially, we went and we actually pitched this to our local community, to our local emergency management. And they said, heck yeah, we want this. So since then, we've worked really closely with current emergency management authorities at university level, at a local level, state level, government level. And we're going to continue to do so. And I just want to invite any emergency authority out there that is looking to expand their engagement capacity. Check out HazAdapt. We are here for you. We are creating this technology for the gaps that you're seeing on the ground. And I want to just say that as we are rising all together, technology is rising, emergency management is rising, and the public is rising. HazAdapt is going to be there to rise to this occasion and meet those needs. So a lot is on your plate, emergency managers, and our goal is to help support that plate with you. And if we can, lighten that load some. Thank you, everyone, for what you do. And Dan, thank you for what you do. This is so important that people hear voices like yours and like mine to really see others out there that said, hey, yeah, okay, I'm going to rise to the occasion. It's out of my comfort zone. It's out of my wheelhouse, but it's a need that I know I can figure out and solve.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And more than that, I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. A person's time is the most valuable thing they have, and I appreciate you giving me some. And I look forward to being able to support your efforts. And if I can do so, please let me know. I will share the links for that you share with me to the show notes and to those who are listening or viewing the episode. For all those who are watching and listening, thank you for taking the time to do so. I am Dan Scott. Please remember to comment, share, like, reach out to me on direct messenger if you have any interest on being on the show or having a question answered or a resource shared. I am Dan Scott, and I'll talk to you next time.